July 4th, 2020. Burn your mask day. Record and post with this tag. Burn your mask. #burn your mask. Because wearing a mask means you are a slave. They used to stop when they had slaves. Well, they've always had slaves. But when they put a mask like that on the face, it's to stop them speaking. Say you've got no speech. So wearing a mask means you've got no speech and you're a slave. Australian government. It should be noted that PCR tests cannot distinguish between bullshit and non-infective RNA. This means the test cannot distinguish bullshit from a cold or measles or Ebola. Notable human disease caused by RNA include Ebola disease, SARS, that one rabies, common cold, influenza, hepatitis C, West Nile fever, polio and measles. Don't get tested. They're infecting people when they test them. The truth is uncontrovertible. So burn the masks, hug friends and strangers, go to shops that welcome you, not treat you like a leper, choose a pub that wants you there, get an illicit haircut, enjoy life. The government have stolen enough. Does anyone else think it's weird that Jeffrey Epstein had a painting of George Bush playing with a paper airplane sitting in front of two collapsed Jenga towers? Senior district judge ruled lawyers had improperly gained access to documents. Lawyers from Cooper and Kirk were ordered to destroy the evidence. Former Epstein attorney Alan Dershowitz also denied access to the documents. A US district judge has ordered attorneys for Jeffrey Epstein's accuser, Virginia Roberts Gifford, to destroy evidence from her case against Ghislaine Maxwell. Senior US District Judge Loretta Preska ruled Wednesday that the lawyers from Cooper and Kirk had improperly gained access to the documents. Even though they proved she was guilty as shit, they were ordered by what I suspect a corrupt judge to destroy them. Are you ready? Are you ready to have a large number of famous politicians, actors and media figures revealed as paedophiles and pedivores? Are you ready to find out about collusion and conspiracies which have killed millions of people? Are you ready to find out that politicians you have trusted have committed high treason and will probably be executed? If not, brace yourself. A photograph has just emerged of accused sex abuser, paedophile, Ghislaine Maxwell sitting on a throne at Buckingham Palace with actor and paedophile Kevin Spacey. Being considered crazy by those who are still victims of cultural conditioning is a compliment, but you are not crazy. You are awake in an insane society. For that exact reason, most people will call you crazy. Blue stripes and palm trees. Where have we seen this before? Oh yeah, Epstein's Torture Island. Attorneys representing ex-team accuser Virginia Gifford must destroy evidence from her case against Ghislaine Maxwell after improperly gaining access to documents, court rules. Did you know the Apple logo represents the fall of man when Adam and Eve ate from the forbidden tree? The first Apple computer sold for $666.66. The Simpsons predicted Pizzagate. Zip Zap Pizza Arcade. The kidnapping was at our other location. Cannibalism, the new gold. Cook humans. Anthony Wieners. Ghislaine Maxwell didn't kill herself. Epstein Island frequent flyers. Now you know why this is so big. And just look at every single face and you should recognise almost every single one on there. If not, well, means you don't watch too much TV or films, which is a good thing. As you can see, the dirty, filthy bastards. The word is Madonna may have already been executed. It'd be nice, wouldn't it? Can't mention this on any petition. Asylum seeker Adam Wright and Mohammed relax at a 3-star Best Western Park hotel in Lancashire. Meanwhile, on the streets of Britain, our own people suffer. Your post goes against our community standards. The usual bullshit. Brilliant interview with Dr. Kaufman, who has lost his job for daring to speak out against the scamdemic. A SARS-CoV-2 virus has never been isolated. It's only theoretical. Deaths from other causes are being listed as bullshit to create the illusion of a pandemic. For goodness sake, do your own research and stop buying the bullshit in the mainstream media. In fact, stop watching it altogether. BBC deleted this moments after accidentally posting it. Ghislaine Maxwell moved to intensive care as bullshit symptoms worsen. In case you've been living under a rock, Sinead O'Connor exposed church sex abuse in 1992. Corey Feldman exposed paedophiles in Hollywood. A UN report found they employ 3,300 paedophiles. 33 is just a coincidence? Yeah, right. Daniel Tosh exposed a paedophile channel on YouTube with 12 billion views. Bill Clinton and many politicians flew Epstein's Lolita Express. An actress trafficked kids for an elite sex cult. The media covered up Jimmy Savile's paedophilia. A former UK PM raped kids and it was covered up. And people still think elite paedophile rings are just a conspiracy theory. Worn face coverings their entire life and still reported to have bullshit. Think. USSA central bankers stole 7 trillion after government locked people down. While the mainstream media focused on which senile sycophant will be the banker's puppet for the next 4 years, the central banks are destroying what's left of the economy and sovereignty to usher in the new world order. The election is all just a distraction from the real enemy, the banking cabal that runs this world and has already selected the next president. Mainstream media seems to be part of a propaganda operation that is trying to change the conversation right now from what really matters, which is that the most powerful banking cabal in the world, the people who essentially own and operate the government of the United States and Britain and every other country, the West and most of the world, and if anyone dares to point out the new world order is being forced on us right in front of our eyes, while Donald Trump, who swore he'd drain the swamp, is still occupying the White House, the cognitive dissonance rears its ugly head. The truth is that Trump has only helped enrich the bankers and the elitists with the constant passage of more stimulus to cover up for the central bank's collapse. Those central banks stole at least $7 trillion, primarily from poor people. The government forced bullshit lockdown, which destroyed small businesses all over the world. Poor people all over the planet are now starving, while the fat cats in Washington rest easy after printing of unlimited money for the world's biggest and wealthiest. Research determines protesters did not cause spike in bullshit cases. Protesters against systematic racism held in 300 plus US cities following the alleged death of George Floyd did not cause a significant increase in the bullshit infections, according to a team of economists who have published their findings in a 60-page paper released by the National Bureau of Economic Research. Those somewhat surprising results are supported by bullshit testing data in many popular cities where demonstrations were held. In the immediate aftermath of Floyd's death, alleged, health officials expressed great concern that protesters, potentially yelling and shouting in very close proximity, would quickly spread the bullshit, which might lead to devastating outbreak. However, researchers found no evidence that urban protests reignited the bullshit case growth during the more than 3 weeks following protests' onset. This proves that the bullshit is a lie. They're not letting you go to pubs. The music's got to be quiet so you can talk quietly and not shout and that. Bullshit. It's exposed that it's bullshit. In fact, they determined that based on cell phone data, cities which had protests saw an increase in social distancing behaviour for the overall population relative to cities that did not, leading to modest evidence of a small, longer-run case growth decline. The study's leader, author Daval Dave of Bentley University, said, in many cities, the protests actually seem to lead to net increase in social distancing as more people who did not protest decided to stay off the streets. The study used newly collected data from 315 of the largest US cities and documents that protests took place in 281 of the cities. The author pre-released the paper last week and it has not yet been peer-reviewed. The study's conclusions are supported by bullshit testing data in many of the cities that were home to prevalent protesting. For instance, in Minneapolis, Department of Health reported that more than 15,000 people were tested at centres set up in communities affected by the protests, and 1.7% of tests came back positive. We don't know that for a fact. Below this, because they haven't even identified the bullshit yet. There's 130 years we've been identifying the problem and proving that the problem causes the symptoms that they say it does, and they've not been able to do that. Below the statewide average of about 3.6, according to Washington Post, protest attendees in Minneapolis returned positive rates of less than 1%, and that officials believe the low infection rates reflect that the protests were outside. Rachel Chandler. Rachel Ray Chandler Guinness is another madam tied to Jeffrey Epstein and his paedophile island. She is currently based out of New York. She was born in 1998, but her origins are fairly hidden and information is scarce. However, she is the daughter of the Chandler family that owned the Los Angeles Times. Evidence shows that she was also raised in the world of child trafficking, and the name Chandler is used as code word for child handler. Rachel graduated in 2005. How did she do that if she was born in 98? Because that would only make her 7. They must have something wrong there then. Maybe it was 88. From the Brentwood School in Los Angeles. Her first job was at the Standard Hotel. We'll cover in depth and link here, which is now known to be a front for child trafficking. She married Tom Guinness in 2012, who is a well-known stylist in the United Kingdom. Their first wedding was family only, held in Los Angeles, California. Vogue covered both weddings, her standard wedding in LA and her family, and her shamanic wedding in the United Kingdom for her friends. Chandler started out as a child sex slave working at the Standard Hotel in New York. She would partake in Purple Night, the colour representative of mind control in the Boom 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 at the Standard Hotel. With her connections, she was able to fund her photographic and DJ careers before establishing the Midland Agency. The Midland Agency was co-founded by Rachel Chandler and Walter Pierce in September of 2016. The agency is publicly known as a casting and modelling agency based out of New York. They search for young talent. Yeah, we know what they want to do with that. But the Midland Agency is front that is used to attract new children and teens into the world of child trafficking. This becomes a common theme in the fashion, art and entertainment industries. Children that are shipped to the or from North America become labelled as living art. There are also laws in place banning the inspection of shipping containers containing live art, allowing for child trafficking. No one has died from the bullshit. Important revelation shared by Dr. Stoyan Aloksov, president of the Bulgarian Pathology Association. A high-profile European pathologist is reporting that he and his colleagues across Europe have not found any evidence of any deaths from the bullshit on that continent. Dr. Stoyan Alexov called the World Health Organization, a criminal medical organization for creating worldwide fear and chaos without providing objectively verifiable proof of a pandemic. Another stunning revelation from Bulgarian Pathology Association, BPA, President Dr. Alexov, is that he believes it's currently impossible to create bullshit against the bullshit. He also revealed that European pathologists haven't identified any antibodies that are specific for SARS-CoV-2. These stunning statements raise major questions, including about officials and scientists claims regarding that the many poisons they're brushing into clinical trials around the world. They also raised doubt about the variety of claims of discovery of anti-novel bullshit antibodies which are begging to be used to treat patients. Bullshit specific antibodies are supposedly the basis for the expensive serology test kits being used in many countries, some of which have been found to be unacceptably inaccurate. Exclusive. Plans for contact tracing and bullshit traced back to 2017, 2 years before the outbreak. Remember, all links to everything you're seeing here are in the description. The origins of the bullshit and the global planning for contact tracing and have been traced to meetings in Wuhan, China in September 2017, 2 years before the outbreak of the bullshit, according to revelations of the Thomas Paine podcast and the More Paine show on Subscriberstar and Patreon. Also, Paine reveals the likely endgame of Bill and Melinda Gates' push to pump vaccines into you, your children and loved ones, which started to take shape in China in September 2017, and it's beyond disturbing. Boris Johnson's dad, Stanley, jets to Greece, defying government advice on foreign travel because they know there's no frigging disease they know it's bullshit. The Greeks are trying to stop bulk arrivals from the UK, but they were quite happy to have me coming in. Stanley Johnson has managed to find his way to Greece despite the country putting a ban on UK visitors. Boris Johnson's dad was defied Foreign Office guidance which says Britain should only go on essential trips. Greece extended its travel ban for Brits last week despite reopening its borders to more international visitors on Wednesday, July 1st. This means that flights carrying passengers from the UK will be restricted, sources told the Athens News. But Stanley, 79, has documented his trip on social media where he jetted from England to Bulgaria, then to Greece, as no direct flights from the UK are entering the country. He shared the snap of his journey, including one in a mask at the airport, then from the aeroplane. Inside the Reuters year-long investigation into judicial misconduct across the US. Reuters this week published an investigation revealing how state and local judges have repeatedly escaped public accountability for misdeeds that have victimized thousands. A year-long Reuters investigation by Michael Burns and John Schifferman found that 9 out of every 10 judges were allowed to keep their positions of extraordinary power after violating judicial ethics rules or breaking laws they pledged to uphold. This was the first comprehensive accounting of judicial misconduct nationally. Reuters investigated 1,509 cases from the last dozen years in which judges resigned, retired, or were publicly disciplined following accusations of misconduct. Reuters also identified 3,613 cases from 2008 through 2018 in which states disciplined wayward judges but kept hidden from the public key details of their offences. Burns, a Pulitzer Prize-winning investigative reporter from Reuters, explained how the investigation started. Over the years, many of us have seen local news briefs about wayward judges, usually after some crazy comment or behaviour. This story began with a simple question that did not have an easy answer. How many judges have been disciplined for violating their oaths or breaking the law? Nobody knew. A cornerstone of investigating reporting is precision. So we decided to track judicial disciplinary actions over the last decade from every state and the District of Columbia using spreadsheets. We created databases built from the state's records and myriad of sources to categorize the nature of each violation. We also hit on a novel idea: count the many victims of judicial misconduct. Analysis of the spreadsheet data guided our reporting. Burns continued. At least 5,206 people were directly affected by a judge's misconduct. The victims range from people who were illegally jailed to those subject to racist, sexist and other abusive comments from judges in ways that tainted the cases. We travelled to a dozen states, conducted hundreds of interviews and obtained previously undisclosed court and law enforcement documents, including audio and video recordings. We were driven by a public service mission to reveal how states err on the side of protecting the rights of and reputations of judges, not on the concerns of victims or the public. England's privatised water firms paid £57 billion in dividends since 1991. So £57 billion in just under 30 years. English water companies have handed more than £2 billion a year on average to shareholders since they were privatised 3 decades ago, according to analysis for The Guardian. The payouts in dividends to shareholders of parent companies between 1991 and 2019 amount to £57 billion. Nearly half the sum they spent on maintaining and improving the country's pipes and treatment plants in that period. Critics say, while continuing to pay high dividends, they have failed to carry out significant national infrastructure works to improve the water and sewage system. When Margaret Thatcher sold off the water industry in 1989, the government wrote off all debts. But according to the analysis by David Hall and Carol Yearwood of the Public Service International Research Unit of Greenwich University, the 9 privatised companies in England have amassed debts of £48 billion over the past 3 decades, almost as much as the sum paid out to shareholders. The debt cost them £1.3 billion in interest last year. The 45 communist goals from 1963. I'm just going to jump straight in. 1. US acceptance of coexistence as the only alternative to atomic war. US willingness to capitulate in preference to engage in atomic war. Develop the illusion that total disarmament by the United States would be a demonstration of moral strength. Permit free trade between all nations regardless of communist affiliation and regardless of whether or not items could be used for war. Extension of long-term loans to Russia and Soviet satellites. Provide America aid to all nations regardless of communist domination. Grant recognition of Red China, admission of Red China to the UN. Set up East and West Germany to separate states in spite of Khrushchev's promise in 1955 to settle the German question for free elections under supervision of the UN. Prolong the conference to ban atomic tests because the United States has agreed to suspend tests as long as negotiations are in progress. Allow the Soviet satellites individual representatives in the UN. Promote the UN as the only hope for mankind. If its charter is written, demand that it be set up as a one world government with its own independent armed forces. Some communist leaders believe the world can be taken over as easily by the UN as by Moscow. Sometimes these two centres compete with each other as they are now doing in the Congo. Resist any attempt to outlaw Communist Party. Do away with loyalty oaths. Continue giving Russia access to the US Patent Office. Capture one or both of the political parties in the United States. Done. That's all done so far, actually. Use technical decisions to the courts to weaken basic American institutions by claiming their activities violate civil rights. Get control of the schools. Use them as transmission belts for socialism and current communist propaganda. Soften the curriculum. Get control of teachers' associations. Put the party line in textbooks. Gain control of all student newspapers. Use student riots to foment public protests against programs or organizations which are under communist attack. Infiltrate the press. Done. Get control of book review assignments, editorial writing, policy-making positions. Gain control of key positions in radio, TV and motion pictures. Well and truly done a long time ago. Continue discrediting American culture by degrading all forms of artistic expression. An American communist cell was told to eliminate all good sculpture from parks and buildings, substitute shapeless, awkward and meaningless forms. Yeah, they do that in Nottingham. Control art critics and direct of art museums. Our plan is to promote ugliness, repulsive, meaningless art. Eliminate all laws governing obscenity by calling them censorship and a violation of free speech and free press. This is how they turned the schools into pedo places. Break down cultural standards of morality by promoting pornography and obscenity in books, magazines, motion pictures, radio and TV. Present homosexuality, degeneracy and promiscuity as normal, natural, healthy. Infiltrate the churches and replace revealed religion with social religion. Discredit the Bible and emphasize the need for intellectual maturity, which does not need a religious crutch. Eliminate prayer or any phase of religious expression in the schools or on the ground that it violates the principle of separation of church and state. Discredit the American Constitution by calling it inadequate, old-fashioned, out of step and, with modern needs, a hindrance to cooperation between nations of the worldwide basis. Discredit the American founding fathers. Present them as selfish aristocrats who had no concerns for the principles of separation and church-state. Belittle all forms of American culture and discourage the teaching of American history of the ground that it was only a minor part of the big picture. Give more emphasis to Russian history since the communists took over. Support any socialist movement to give centralized control over any part of the cultural, education, social agencies, welfare programs, mental health clinics, etc. Eliminate all laws and procedures which interfere with the operation of the communist apparatus. Eliminate the House Committee on Un-American Activities. Discredit the eventually dismantle the FBI. Infiltrate and gain control of more unions. Infiltrate and gain control of big business. Transfer some of the powers of arrest from the police to social agencies. Treat all behavioral problems as psychiatric disorders which no one but psychiatrists can understand or treat. Dominate the psychiatric profession and use mental health laws as a means of gaining coercive control over those who oppose communist goals. Discredit the family as an instruction. Encourage promiscuity and easy divorce. Emphasize the need to raise children away from the negative influence of parents. Attribute prejudice, mental blocks and retarding of children to suppressive influences of parents. Create the impression that violence and insurrection are legitimate aspects of the American tradition, that students and special interest groups should rise up and use united force to solve economic, political and social problems. Overthrow all colonial governments before native populations are ready for self-government. Internationalize the Panama Canal. Repeat the Connolly Reservation so the United States cannot prevent the World Court from seizing jurisdiction over domestic problems. Give the World Court jurisdiction over national and individuals alike. And that's where they want to take us. Council confirms Dominic Cummings' spare cottage had no planning consent, pays no council tax. By True Publica. On June 2nd, we reported that the highly controversial special advisor to the Prime Minister made it clear that he had stayed at a spare cottage at his father's farm when he addressed allegations that he had broken lockdown restrictions in April. The whole event turned into a public relations disaster for Boris Johnson and still is. Our report said, not yet in the mainstream media is that the cottage in Durham in question is not registered for council tax, nor has planning permission been sought for the cottage from Durham County Council. In other words, the owner of that property is possibly breaking the law and then knowingly defrauding the local authority. The implications of this story, if true, are surely that Cummings is not just an unfit person to be anywhere near number 10 Downing Street, but that he has now dragged his own family into possible legal action. The property that is owned by Cummings' father is in fact jointly owned with Dominic Cummings. That being the case, the Spear Cottage could be considered a second home, and as we all know, trips to second home were expressly excluded as per government guidelines in combating the bullshit. They're all crooks, every one of them. Now some good news. No need for the poisons. New hydroxychloroquine study proves Trump right, says it significantly cuts death rates. This was from yesterday, the 3rd of the 7th, 2020. A substantial new study has found that the anti-malaria drug hydroxychloroquine helped patients survive the bullshit. In fact, the study from the Henry Ford Health System in Michigan said the drug significantly cut the death rate of patients. Treatment with hydroxychloroquine cut the death rate significantly in sick patients hospitalized with bullshit and without heart-related side effects, the health organization reports. This analysis of 2,500 bullshit patients found the drug can be effective in patients received it early in the treatment. Our analysis show that using hydroxychloroquine helped save lives, said neurosurgeon Dr. Stephen Kalkanis, CEO Henry Ford Medical Group and Senior Vice President and Chief Academic Officer of Henry Ford Health System. As doctors and scientists, we look at the data for insight. And the data here is clear that there was benefit to using the drug as a treatment for sick hospitalized patients. President Trump had touted the drug early on as a possible experiment treatment for bullshit patients. But then studies found conflicting results about its effectiveness, and the news media hammered him on it. One of the earlier negative studies was later retracted.
If you tell a lie big enough and keep repeating it, people will eventually come to believe it. The lie can be maintained only for such time as the state can shield the people from the political, economic and/or military consequences of the lie. It thus becomes vitally important for the state to use all of its powers to repress dissent. For the truth is the mortal enemy of the lie, and thus by extension, the truth is the greatest enemy of the state. Joseph Goebbels.
Social distancing guidelines after pint number 3. What if I told you I was just sitting back watching the fuckery unfold? I'm no expert on the bullshit, but this is the cure. Dennis Healy. World events do not occur by accident. They are made to happen, whether it is to do with national issues or commerce, and most of them are staged and managed by those who hold the purse strings.